Hello, listeners. My name is Professor Abdontes Finch, and welcome to the Nightmare Trials.
There is nothing I'd love better than showing people a good time. And I do hope that you're having yourself a good time. You're having a good time, right? I said you are having a good time, right? Oh, don't cry. Stop crying. Stop crying. Stop. You're going to kill the mood. You know, I thought you were going to be different. Someone I could really bond with. But here you are, sniffling on the ground and crying like a little child. Worse than a child. I've had a child or two here and there, and they don't act the way you are acting even now. Fuck it. I'm done with you, and she is hungry.
Well, Mr. Porcine, what brings you back into the shop today?
Wilbur Porcine walked up to the counter of Miller's Auto Detail and Repair Shop, and he placed his keys of his Ram 2500 on the counter. He smiled at Old Man Miller, his teeth reflecting the artificial light from within the shop, and removed his polarized glasses.
Well, I bagged me another doe last night. The thing bled all over my truck bed. I'm needing a good cleaning before I leave town today. I have some business to attend to down in Pueblo first thing in the morning. Any way you can squeeze me in for a cleaning?
Of course we can. We can always make room for you. Hell, it's because of you that this place even keeps its lights on sometimes. You have been our best and most consistent customer. I'll get Rudy now on it.
Mr. Miller picked up the phone that directly connected to the auto detailing room. There was a brief conversation, and within a minute, Rudy came bursting through the side shop door. The kid was maybe 16 and was Miller's grandson. He was wire-thin and had short-cut black hair, and what the locals around here call the Miller's nose. Bulbous and large. In a fuller face, it would be somewhat proportionate, but on Rudy, it stuck out like a sore thumb.
Hey, Mr. Porcine, did you bring that beauty of a ram for me to clean up for you today?
Wilbur looked at the boy. Damn, he was getting tall. He didn't even have to look down at the boy to make eye contact, and his face was just pockmarked with pimple scars. The boy had grown so much since our last visit. It felt like yesterday when the two had met. Rudy being a fresh 13-year-old, struggling through school and dealing with bullies. The boy's IQ was well under what anyone would consider normal, and since he was different, well, he got made fun of. With his slipping grades and obvious signs of depression setting in, the Millers had allowed for him to drop out of school as soon as he became a freshman. They wanted him to at least make it to high school, just in case he ever wanted to go back and get his GED, but Wilbur didn't think that that was in the cards for the kid. As quote-unquote dumb as people thought he was, the kid was a genius when it came to vehicles. Further, he was a whiz when it came to detailing those vehicles too. But the most important thing is Rudy was an expert at blood removal. Even under a blacklight, he wouldn't be able to find any residue. And with Wilbur's obsession for the hunt and kill, there wasn't anyone he would rather trust than Rudy.
Rudy, my boy. So good to see you, kid. And look at you. I would say you've grown half a foot since I last saw you. And yes, I got the ram out front waiting for you. Also, I put about 2 steaks and a pound of ground meat from the dough I bagged. You go and keep that as a tip.
Rudy smiled big, his teeth stained a harsh yellow and a wad of chew poking its way up from his bottom lip. Wilbur really wished that boy would at least brush his teeth more. The chewing thing was what it was. The kid lived in a hick town, and if people around here weren't smoking, they were chewing. Regardless, some general hygiene would be nice. The boy already had it rough with his looks as it was.
Well, thank you kindly, Mr. Porcine. The ones you brought in last time were delicious. We ended up cooking them over some applewood. Medium rare, just how I like them.
Excellent. Well, those ones may be a little different and kind of special. I didn't know it at the time, but this one was pregnant. So I'm guessing the hormones running through her body will make the meat taste a little different. Maybe more tender. So it shouldn't be too bad.
Shoot, ain't no problem. Grandpa shot himself a pregnant doe last year, and it was all good. Meat's meat, right?
That it is. Well, Rudy, if you wouldn't mind, the keys are on the counter. And I do have to be on my way here shortly. I have a lot of things to catch up on for work. How long do you think it'll take to get the blood clean from the truck?
Give me about an hour. I gotta let the chemicals really work into the truck liner to kill any residue. You're welcome to stay here, but I knowed you won't.
Intuitive. You know me so well. I think I may go for a stroll down to the city walk.
Rudy shook his head as a form of confirmation. He had no idea what intuitive meant, but he thought it was something nice. Mr. Porcine had never been mean to him or raised his voice at him. He always paid and tipped well, even more than the meat that he provided. Rudy trusted him, and he worked extra hard to ensure that Mr. Porcine would keep coming back here. And he never questioned him on his hunting, even when he did it out of season. Everyone around here would do it, and hell, they had to do it sometimes just to survive. The town was dying out. There were more old people than kids running around, and money was tight for everyone. Then, those who graduated from high school either left the town for bigger and better things, or they got addicted to whatever drug there was around at the time. Recently, it's been meth, and Rudy did well to stay away from it. He saw what that junk did to some of his friends and his mother, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Rudy smiled back up at Mr. Porcine.
Sounds good. Tell Miss Abigail I says hi.
Rudy grabbed the keys and rushed out the front door. Within seconds, the sound of the ram starting up echoed into the small shop. And Wilbur watched as Rudy backed it up and drove it towards the detail room bay doors. He looked back over towards Mr. Miller.
You know, I do appreciate you being so kind to that boy. Since his mother died and all that junk going around school, he's been sort of a loner. Now that he's out of school, though, he's been a bit better. But when he sees you, that boy lights up. And I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, it's nothing really. The boy is smart. Maybe not in the conventional way we perceive smart people to be, but he knows what he is doing. And all he needs in life is a fair shake. Someone to show him that things really aren't that bad, and that not all the people you meet are monsters. Now, before I leave, I would like to pay up front for the work being done. So what's the damage?
After paying and leaving a generous tip, Wilbur walked out of the shop and began to make his way to the Mountain View Park. The walk itself was just a quarter of a mile north, and the view was serene. An icy blue lake looked out and blended in with the frosted tips of the Rocky Mountains. This time of year, while brisk, there would be all sorts of wildlife ranging from deer, ducks, and chipmunks. It was the place he loved to go after a hunt and kill. It allowed him to free his mind and reflect on everything that had just transpired. He made his way up the sidewalk and towards the lake. A light breeze whisked through the air, pushing up the autumn leaves. The smell of fall followed shortly behind. The sun beamed down on him, warming his body. It was perfection, and the peace he needed. He strolled up to his favorite bench and bent down to brush the dried bird droppings away from the seat. He sat down and crossed one leg over the other. He stared out over the small lake in front of him, taking in the beauty of nature and all that it had provided. And he thought to himself,
This is what the world was for. Our lives were made to enjoy moments like this, where the landscape provides solace in the minds of madness. It satiates the greater urges that we all have come to desire and are addicted to. We are vile creatures, not deserving of what this planet has given us.
His mind began to then wonder. He thought of the hunts and his victims. He thought of the snowstorm just a year back, and he thought of the 2 women he had gutted and dried years ago. And then he thought of her.
Abigail,
He said softly under his breath.
If I had only known then what I know now, you would still be with me. I thought you were nothing more than something to feed that demon inside of me. But here I am, sitting here and thinking of you, feeling unfulfilled and lost. I can't enjoy this life I have now, or even my kills the way I normally do, because you are on my mind. I have gotten more violent in the years since you left me. I tried to preserve your name and your essence, but it is all rotting away. Like the decaying flesh you are, it is rotting away.
Tears streamed down Wilbur's face as he heard police sirens start to blare in the distance. He slammed his eyes shut and began to sob now. He thought he would have had more time to sit here and reflect. He thought Rudy would at least try to contact him or something before the police were called, but it appears that no matter how nice you are to someone, they are quick to turn you in. And to be honest, he probably would have done the same if he was in Rudy's position right now. So there's no need in blaming the boy. Wilbur let out a soft chuckle. He had left Rudy the extra meat in the cab of the truck. But more than that, he had left the remains of his last kill in the bed of the truck as well. They were in a black 33-gallon heavy-duty trash bag, and he had made sure to poke a hole in the bottom of the bag to let the blood run. Rudy, being the curious boy that he was, would see it and look inside and try to understand what he was dealing with and what he should do with the bag. But what he would find wouldn't be some dough that was poached out of season. He would find the remains of a woman, all dissected up and ravaged with bite marks, slash wounds, and pulverized bones. It would scare the kid for sure, but it was necessary. And honestly, Wilbur couldn't think of any other way he would want to be caught. He was done with the killing. After 15 kills and the remorse he felt after, then the burning need to kill again. He had had enough. It needed to end, and he needed to be dealt with. That demon inside him had ruled his body long enough, and he was going to now take control. The sirens now moved in closer to his position. Wilbur reached into his pocket and pulled out a 9mm handgun. He flipped the safety off and racked a bullet into the chamber. If he had turned himself in, he wouldn't have been able to enjoy this view one more time. He would have been taken into custody, tried, convicted, and then he would have spent the rest of his life rotting behind bars. He wasn't going to let that happen. He heard the screeching tires behind him, the sirens of the police cars now overpowering his auditory senses. He put the gun up against his temple. He listened as he was ordered to drop the weapon and give himself up. A smile crossed his face. He was giving himself up, just not to them. He was giving himself up to the eternal darkness that would surely greet him soon.
Abigail, I will see you soon.
Jerica walked through a sterile hallway, clipboard in hand. She read over the notes for her most recent cadaver out loud to herself as she entered into the exam room. Her chest mic picking up her voice as she talked.
Wilbur Porcine, age 32, 6 feet 1 inches tall, weight 192 pounds. The deceased is presumed to have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the right temple upon the police's arrival to his location. Visuals would corroborate with that assumption. The deceased has a 2-inch wound in the right temple, and it appears that the bullet did not exit from the deceased's head. Multiple scars are present on the torso, abdomen, and genitals, all suspected to be self-inflicted wounds from past self-harm. Items with the deceased are his clothing, cell phone, $3,000 and $100 bills, and a heavy sealed black box inscripted with the name Abigail on it. For some reason, the police did not take this with them when they left. I'm going to begin my internal assessment of the subject now.
Jerica grabbed a scalpel and made an incision from just under Wilbur's sternum down to the top of his pelvis. She made 4 lateral incisions at each end of the line and opened his abdomen like a book. She rummaged through his organs, inspecting each for signs of cancer, and then placed them in a biohazard container to be burned later. She had turned away from Wilbur's body when she heard a rattling noise from behind her. She stopped. She quickly turned her head around and searched the room. There wasn't anything there other than the deceased subject on the cutting block, but the noise unnerved her. She could feel her heart begin to race and a small prickle of panic rise in her throat. She quickly turned around and began to roll the bio cart from the room. But when she reached the doors, they wouldn't move. Thinking that maybe one of the hinges may be stuck, she reared back and slammed into the doors again. But they didn't move. It was then that the lights in the room began to flicker wildly. She slammed the cart into the doors again, this time in a full panic. She was letting out terrified grunts with every hit. Behind her, Wilbur's corpse slowly began to sit up, his eyes open and searching around the room. He looked to the right of him to see a black box with the name Abigail etched onto the top. He opened the box, and the aroma of rot and decaying flesh filled the room. He reached in and pulled out the putrid pig's head and began to slowly place it over his. Jerica stopped her assault on the door as the smell hit her. Her eyes grew wide, the light still flashing around her. She slowly turned her head to see the back of Wilbur Porcine. He was ghostly white with grayish undertones, and he was placing what looked like a rotting pig head onto his head. Jerica fell to the ground and let out a scream. Wilbur turned his whole body towards her, the flaps of skin on his abdomen slapping back and forth like a flag caught in the wind. He picked up the bone saw that was next to him, and he let out a scream. But it wasn't any normal scream. It was the scream of a pig. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushed towards Jerica, bone saw on and in his hand. The lights in the exam room stopped flickering. A pool of blood ran out from underneath the doors, making its way down the hallway. The door flung open, and Jerica's now slashed and ragged body slumped to the floor. Wilbur Porcine, or what was once Wilbur Porcine, stepped over her and out into the hallway. Naked as the day he was born, and covered in fresh blood. The skin on his stomach swayed back and forth. He tilted his head back towards the sky, and he screamed.
Thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. If you would like access to the interdimensional radio station, you can search for the Nightmare Trials on Patreon. Once there, it is only $2 per month to gain access to our extra short stories and chat discussion with the professor. Your contribution helps us continue to do what we do. Further, you can go to the nightmaretrials.square.site and order merch and suggest to be a part of one of our stories. We would love nothing more than to add your name to our writings. Lastly, make sure to follow the podcast and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. Until we meet again,